Putin is finally ready to lose, and Russians started surrendering at surging speeds in the east, specifically in Bakhmut area, and at the same time when you thought this was already more than enough for Russians, Ukrainians once again started targeting the Crimean bridge. But more about all of this in just a couple of minutes. What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. And let's go straight to the point and talk about some ridiculous Russian propaganda. So recently, this poor Babushka from Tomsk, she received, instead of congratulations with the Victory Day on May 9th, she received, believe it or not, invitation to join Wagner. And I know that the situation with the conscripts and recruits in Russia is pretty bad, but is it actually that bad that they have to start recruiting old people? But anyways, in one way or another, in case she decides to join, she'll be the real battle babushka. But okay, next we have a very quick picture from the border between Russia and Finland, and as you can see, they installed these fences, because once again, as soon as Finland joined NATO, the connection, the relation between these two countries kinda significantly worsened. And I just want once again to congratulate the Russian government with successfully failing not letting NATO expand. And ultimately, and I would say this is one of the most ridiculous ones, one the Russian government representative, Mr. Deputy Matveyev, he said that let's impose taxes on having fun, and the money we'll be collecting through these taxes will go to support this special military operation. So it looks like from now on, if you smile in Russia, you will have to pay for this, literally. And this is, I would say, the most Russian news I've heard in so long time. And so yes, if you smiled or, God forbid, even laughed during this episode, you will be taxed in Russia. But don't worry, we are here on the Russian Dude channel. We only ask you to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Also, the weekends are coming, so feel free to follow me on Instagram to see how I live outside of YouTube. The link will be down below. Alright, and now let's talk about some final touches of the Western support to Ukraine, and then we'll talk about the Crimean bridge once again becoming one of the main targets for Ukrainians, and then we'll talk about Russians surrendering at surging speeds. And first of all, according to the head of Pentagon Lloyd Austin, Ukraine is set to receive 31 Abrams tank by this fall. But Ukrainians, at the same time, they also want to increase the usage of their own tanks a lot. That is why the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine ordered so many more of them to be built as soon as possible. And just speaking about the tanks in general, Ukraine has already received 575 of these military machines. The biggest supporter is the country of Poland, which sent 325 tanks. The second place goes to the Netherlands, 85 tanks, and the third place goes to Germany, 80 tanks. But nevertheless, according to the US Secretary of the State Antony Blinken, he said that in case Ukraine needs even more military equipment in their upcoming full ultimate counteroffensive, the US will gladly send more. And don't worry, we will talk about Ukrainian counteroffensive very soon. And ultimately, the training of Ukrainian soldiers pretty much never stops. As you can see from this picture, Ukrainians are training along with the UK, Australian and American instructors in UK military bases. And as always, all the additional photos and videos of these military machines and Ukrainians practicing will be available on my Patreon. The link is down below. But wait, there is more, because one of the most significant news of the last several days is that Ukraine already received extremely long-range missiles from the United Kingdom called Storm Shadow. The range of these missiles is estimated to be at 300 kilometers, or approximately 190 miles, and Ukraine will be able to use them on all of its sovereign territory, including Crimea. And you know what? These missiles are very well capable of destroying this bridge, and there are already some rumors that Ukrainian authorities are planning to attack it once again. Because as you can imagine, Russians just recently finished the repairs of Crimean bridge, so now it is perfect time to attack. And I don't want even to say anything anymore, just take a look at this picture. But okay, now let me briefly give you an update from the south and the east of Ukraine, and then we'll talk about the complete disaster of Russians in Bakhmut and that Putin is finally ready to lose. And first of all, recently in Crimean Peninsula, a Russian helicopter Mi-28 has fallen. Yes, it was not intercepted, it was no malfunctions or anything like this, it just fell. And speaking about Crimea, Russian air defense system allegedly intercepted a Ukrainian drone, which was targeting the western coast of this peninsula. Next we have this picture with all the reported defense lines of Russians along the front lines in Ukraine, and as you can see, the biggest concentration of them is located in the Zaporozhye region, which allows you to assume that this is where Russians expect Ukrainians to attack. But in fact, Ukrainians started attacking in the east, specifically against Bakhmut, which was supposed to be the most complicated fight of this war. And looks like, according to this map once again, that defenses of Russians in this area are not that significant. Our next video comes to us unfortunately from Marinka, and as you can see, this is the results of Russians trying to liberate this city, which pretty much turned the entire town into nothing. And I have absolutely no idea. For me, definitely, it does not look like that Marinka was being liberated by Russians, but just let me know in the comments how do you think liberation should look like. Next we go all the way to the north, across the border, to notorious city of Belgorod, where recently an unidentified object has been intercepted in the sky. And then, as we go all the way back to Ukraine, there was some loud noises heard in Luhansk, and apparently this was an attack, most likely by a Ukrainian long-range missile, and they were targeting, looks like, the oil reservoir, which was next to machinery factory, and both of these objects, as you can see, were successfully destroyed. And just overall, in the last 24 hours, Ukrainians were able to destroy 11 command posts, 19 concentration of Russian forces, 1 ammunition depot, 1 fuel depot, 9 artillery units and their firing positions, 1 air defense system, and 2 other important military targets. It definitely tells you that Ukrainian counteroffensive is on its way. But without a doubt, the most significant events of the last 24 hours came to us from Bakhmut, and according to the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, for the very first time they officially acknowledged that Ukrainians were able to liberate 2 kilometers within this city. We even have this, one of the very first videos, which shows the counteroffensive of Ukrainians in Bakhmut city. In addition to that, Russians spent the entire month trying to capture this road which leads from Bakhmut to Khromovye, just for Ukrainians to completely liberate it in under 1 day. And according to Ukrainians who were engaged in liberating this city, they said that one of the most advantageous, the most beneficial piece of military equipment that they have been using was HIMARS system. They were using the drones to establish the positions of Russians and then using HIMARS to eliminate them. One of the biggest progresses of Ukrainians, as you can see from this map, is that they were able to push Russians significantly further away from the front lines next to Berkhivka water reservoir. But as you would rightfully expect it, the official explanation of the Ministry of Defense of Russia is that the Russian forces tactically retreated to occupy much more significant defense positions which are more stable, and also to take the significant parts of another territories. Which is just a very fancy way of saying that they ran away. But at the same time, this is the very first official confirmation, also by the Ministry of Defense of Russia, that Ukrainian counteroffensive is under its way. But at the same time, they also mentioned that everywhere else, including for example in Solidar and Avdiivka, Marinka, counteroffensive of Ukrainians have completely failed. But the most relatively trustworthy information from the Russian side is coming to us from Yevgeny Prigozhin, the leader of Wagner, who is saying that the flanks around Bakhmut are completely defenseless right now because they were given for the conventional Russian army to protect them, and now they just basically fled, and now Ukrainians established the control over significant roads which lead in and out of this city. According to Prigozhin, the total losses of the Russian army in just 24 hours are approximately at 5 square kilometers. Ukrainians now have in full control this road, which leads from Bakhmut to Chasiv Yar, and then he also says that as soon as Ukrainians are able to establish control over Berkhivka, this is when they will engage the surrounding of Bakhmut from the north. Prigozhin even invited the Minister of Defense of Russia, Sergei Shoigu, to Bakhmut to see the situation himself. And then he even mocked him indirectly, so that Sergei Shoigu, you can use your many years of military experience, which he does not have, to see and tell what Wagner and conventional army should do next. And as for now, even according to the report by the Institute for the Study of War, Russians obviously completely abandoned their dreams to capture Bakhmut, and that is why right now the only thing left for them to do is to kinda try to protect themselves, but most likely to retreat to more favorable positions. And while the Russian propaganda and some more politically correct Western media sources call this a tactical retreat, Prigozhin calls it by its own actual name. Russians are running away in fear. And while doing this, they surrender hundreds of meters and kilometers of Bakhmut land. They've spent months capturing, losing thousands of soldiers, and now everything is going back to Ukraine in under 48 hours. We even have this video which shows this so-called tactical reallocation of Russians, which does not look like tactical reallocation at all. And just overall, this is how the situation inside Bakhmut has changed in the last 2 days. And even the President Zelensky, in one of his most recent speeches, he mentioned that the Russian forces and Putin himself, they already accepted that they lost, and right now they're just looking for good excuses how to explain themselves to the regular Russian public. And ultimately, according to the Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine, Alexei Danilov, Ukraine is now targeting to end this war and liberate all of its territories, preferably by the end of winter of this year. And sooner or later, this entire big victory will be achieved by taking these small steps, and I will be here to guide you throughout the entire process. And if you don't want to miss any of this good news coming to us in the near future, just please consider subscribing to my channel. It only takes one click. The best way to support my work will be through my Patreon, where there is still 1 week of free access. You can also become my channel member, unlock channel badges and channel emojis, or just simply use a PayPal link. Everything can be found to the right and down below. Thank you so much for attention, товарищи, and see you on Tuesday.